Okay, so today we're going to talk about the transfer of learning, which is one of the most important ideas in teaching. This is a way for students to integrate new knowledge into their current knowledge, or to bring new skills that they are learning into their current skill set. So we're going to go into some more detail on the transfer of learning. As I said, it's one of the most important ideas in teaching and learning, and it integrates new knowledge from learning current skills, from new skills into current skills. Basically, we can summarize the transfer of learning as learning how to think. So there are three types of transfer of learning that we're going to talk about today. Type 1 is the traditional, and our traditional is the most fundamental. Its focus is practice, practice, practice. So the knowledge and skills that we learn, we are going to practice, practice, practice until we are able to reuse them in different settings, or alternatively modify them and then reuse them in other settings. So if I'm learning how to play soccer and I want to practice kicking a goal into a net, I'm going to practice it, modify it, shoot from a different angle, practice that, modify that shot, shoot from a different angle until I'm good at it. And we can do the same thing with learning, like reading and writing. Type 2 is constructivism and metacognition. So constructivism is something we talked about last week, and we're building on prior knowledge and integrating new knowledge into that prior knowledge. Metacognition, on the other hand, is thinking about thinking. So it requires awareness in three key areas. One is awareness of the knowledge we already have. A child thinking, I know this. 2 would be awareness of thinking, knowing that they need to think about it cognitively. And 3 would be awareness of the thinking strategy. So this is where revising and self-assessing comes into play. And our third type is going to be tools as transfer vehicles. So some tools help with amplification level, meaning that they just make things you can already do easier or better to do them. If I already know how to use a hammer, a shingling hammer makes it easier to shingle a rooftop. Some tools help beyond amplification. And so this is doing something that is not possible without the tool. So even though a child may already know how to speak, a cell phone, which would allow them to connect with people who are far away, is impossible without the tool of a cell phone. Now, tools in general can be physical things like a hammer or a bicycle. They can also be things that we learn. So, for example, learning how to read can be a valuable tool. So as we move on, we're going to talk about the near and far transfer of learning. So the near transfer is something that is so similar it occurs easily and without thought. This can be the shoelace example. So when you were a child, you probably learned how to tie your shoes on a pair of tennis shoes that you wore in grade school. But when it was Sunday and you needed to go to church, you could also tie your dress shoes up because you knew how to do it and you didn't have to think hard about the differences between the laces. A far transfer is a skill that is a little more challenging to be done automatically, and it can't be done without thought. So although these are easy to explain, they're not always easy to assess. So one example is a child who can tie a bow in front of them may not be able to tie a bow on an apron behind them. For a child who's a little more advanced, I guess you can say, it would be a near transfer because they can do it. But for another child, it would be a far transfer, although it's the exact same task. So while near and far transfer of learning have been around for over 100 years, they're not exactly easy to assess. We can go into the low and high road of transfer learning. The low road is where stimuli and tasks are similar enough to elicit a semi-automatic response. This requires little to no thought process. Very similar to a near transfer in our previous slide. One example of a low road transfer would be knowing how to drive a car and then all of a sudden having to drive a moving van because you're moving far away. They're similar enough, I know where the gas pedal is, I know how to use the steering wheel, that I probably don't have to think about it too much, even though the two vehicles are different. With a high road transfer, this requires a mindful abstraction. It's not a thoughtless process. It requires a lot of time and mental effort to make these connections. So one example of high road transfer would be this abstract thought process of comparing politics to chess and how both are part of a power struggle. And making that metaphor and drawing those similarities is not something I could do mindlessly. I have to put thought into it. So now things become a little bit easier to explain between low and high road transfer as opposed to the near and far transfer of learning. So that's all we have for today for our transfer of learning. Thank you for watching.